In this upcoming episode of DoubleDM, we will talk about how to create a compelling political intrigue game. We touch on many different topics such as what political intrigue even means and how to create a political intrigue game step by step, as well as what it means to let players be active participants in the intrigue and how to still include combat and or action in the game. For more information and timestamps, see the show notes of this episode. Okay, hey, it's your host Emil, and after this quick introduction to the episode, just let me share some quick announcements with you guys as well. Why Your World Matters is well on the way to get finished. We probably have everything done when this releases, so keep tight, you will hear about it soon. Also, I want to draw attention to this week's mid-show role, cause it's for a charity cause for the Transgender Educational Network of Texas to help affected transgender youth in Texas. See the links in the show notes of this episode to check out more and find out how you can help. And with that, straight to the episode.
Hello and welcome back to DoubleDM episode 59. With me today, as usual, is my lovely co-host who is not distracting me at all times, Emil. How are you?
Hello everyone. Hello Niels. I am doing very good today. It's a Thursday. It's March 17, which is St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean anything at all in Germany.
Yeah, I mean, it's just Thursday in March.
But also, Niels, how are you feeling that we've nearly reached the biggest milestone in DDM history?
Which milestone are we talking about?
69 episodes.
Oh, hell yeah. Nice. Hell yeah. That will be celebrated. That will be celebrated. At least.
Oh, yeah.
For me. I will celebrate this. I mean, it's just a nice number of episodes.
The nice number of episodes. It's
exactly
the actual nicest number of episodes. After that, it's only 420.
Yeah, that's a little ways off.
But hey, let's see if we make it there. And after that, numbers get boring.
69,420 episodes.
Oof.
For the combination.
I don't think that there's even a podcast out there that has 69,000 episodes.
Yeah, I doubt it.
So we will be the first.
Yeah.
With weekly episodes. With 69,000 weeks.
That's a lot.
You don't say. I mean, that's 690 times 2. That's over 1,000 years.
1,331.3425 years. That's a lot of years off. It's in the far future.
But with Titan's Core coming out, I mean, even though it doesn't count as DGM episodes, it's still gonna be hosted as a show of us. So we could also count it as episodes re-released. That would probably get us there around in maybe
800 years.
800 years.
Yeah, that's doable, I guess, for
I
elves.
think. We just need to achieve Lichdom and all is well. And we will be the first podcast of 2 Liches talking. I think that would be a marketing strategy. Hey, we're dead.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, we're dead, but we are still talking. Let's go.
The podcasting Lich.
That would be awesome.
Would it?
Kind of.
I mean, what would you talk about if you're dead? Well, everything, probably.
Yeah, everything, because...
I mean, would it be a podcast about achieving Lichdom, or would it be just still us doing this bullshit we do now?
Probably the latter.
Sad.
I mean,
or
we could talk multiple episodes into becoming a Lich because we have the time, you know?
You're not wrong on that.
We can...
So, as everyone could have guessed already, we don't have anything really to talk about today on this recap because it's been a very boring week. So, yeah, as we don't have anything to discuss, Niels, do you have any TTRPG plans?
I have, actually. On Saturday, I am playing in a campaign started by one of my fellow friends who starts DMing Saturday. So I'm interested to see how he he's doing and how he will craft the story and stuff like that. I'm interested and excited. And before that, we are doing this on Saturday evening, and on Saturday morning, I am hosting a game with the same group of people, but in my universe as a DM. So one play DM, one part player.
Okay, then talk to me about your DMing first. What campaign is that, and how is it going?
It's starting out, basically. We are 3 or 4 sessions in, and now they are starting to get the plot points or collect some plot points. At least that's the plan for the next session. Let's see where they are going. They recently got a new home base, so they might want to spend the whole session customizing it, and that's totally fine and awesome. Or they will just move that to a later point in time and start with the plot hook that they took. They found a carnival ticket for some sort of spectral circus, and that's starting in one day in game time. So they have 1 day of downtime where they could potentially customize everything they want for their home base, or at least start it, and then engage into this circus thing.
Okay. Since this episode will come out after you've had that session, I know you don't know if your players will make it to the circus, but what can you tell me about the circus?
It is a circus led by a cult of a demon. They try to serve that demon, but not reawaken it, because that would mean the end of the world. They try to keep the demon entertained with highly dangerous and sometimes deadly stunts or tricks, so he won't feel the need to ravage the whole world. And some sort of minor villain might or might not make an appearance there. Depending on the way the players play this, they might encounter one of the villains, one of the generals of the big bad evil guy. In fact, they might. But let's see where this is going overall.
Okay. I like festivals in my games because they allow for a lot more structured role-play downtimey things, because party games, drinking, eating, right? You all put this basically in a very condensed space, because that's what carnivals and festivals are, right?
Exactly.
And then you also have a circus there. At least I imagine that there will be also some games around this circus, because of how carnival culture is everywhere around the world. It's a celebration. People come there to spend money. So probably gonna set up some party games or whatever. The good old King's Cup.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and some dice games and...
Exactly, right? And it allows for, fun little challenges your players can attempt to spend time.
Exactly, and without real danger to them.
There are no consequences, really.
Exactly.
Except you lose maybe you lose a copper piece or a silver piece, but that's okay.
Exactly.
One funny story from my table once was when I let my players go to a festival, they had the ability to do an arm wrestling competition. There was always the current champion, and you had to beat the current champion. And my players got the title of champion and then wouldn't stop challenging each other. So everyone would be the champion. So one of them got the champion's title, and then everyone went, I want to challenge him because it's my friend, and I need to challenge my friend. I need to show him that I'm better than him. And then it evolved into them for half an hour challenging each other to arm wrestling matches, even though it didn't mean anything, because there wasn't even a prize pot involved or anything. It was just honor because you were the best at arm wrestling. And my players went so haywire on that fact, and I loved it so much. It was frustrating because it was just, okay, I have this arm wrestling, just roll a strength check, nothing more. Boom. Well, okay. You guys really spent 30 minutes on that because it's fun.
Yeah,
obviously.
Exactly. And I mean, it's a great reward to get a title of some sort. It may not be useful anywhere else except a carnival in this specific town where you are the champion of the arm wrestling competition.
Oh, there wasn't even a title involved. It was just, you're the specific champion of this tavern. You don't get anything, any free drinks, no people like you. It's just you did good.
Yeah, but this sort of recognition kind of sparks weird shit in some players, resulting in them challenging each other for 30 minutes to arm wrestling matches. It's just a fun way or a fun thing to do as a player, and a kind of fun way to watch as a DM.
I mean, it's just fun to see your players get excited over the little things, really.
Exactly.
So to put an advice in this completely unstructured and scripted and completely random recap. Put in little things so that your players might enjoy, and they will hook up to one of those things, and it will be one of the greatest moments you have that day, because your players just go haywire over every single dice roll that they have in an arm wrestling match that doesn't mean anything. Even though they have a big circus show in an hour they want to see, they don't care. They just roll dice and it's arm wrestling and it's fun. And sometimes that's all you really need to make a session memorable.
Exactly.
So your player, your game where you're a player.
Yeah.
It's this person's first time DMing.
Exactly.
So what character are you playing?
I'm playing as Evelyn Tremont, a noble-born archaeologist, and I'm playing as a custom or homebrew class I found online and we went over, an intelligence-based non-spellcaster with reactions in mind and helping your allies with analyzing the enemy and buffing them through saying where their weak spots may be.
Okay.
And I'm excited to see where this is going, but yeah. And at least as far as I have written down anything about the backstory, her whole family is still alive, so not that tragic. She just wanted not to be in a life where everything was predetermined by someone else. She wanted to have some agency in her own life, so she went away to some sort of academy. The name still has to be discussed today with the DM, but yeah.
Okay, I like it. So that intelligent, what level is that, and what features do you have access to from that class?
It's starting at level 1, so there's not a lot yet. At first level, I have the feature adroit analysis, where I can target or choose one creature within 60 feet of me, which I then start to analyze. And for the attack rolls against the analyzing creature can be made with intelligence instead of dexterity or strength. This mark lasts for about a minute, and I can use my skills regarding this marked target to make ability checks like intelligence or wisdom, investigation checks or perception checks as a bonus action regarding that target, rather than spending a full action. And I get unarmored defense, where I get my dexterity and intelligence modifier as my armor class. As far as I've understood, because I know how creatures or people battle, and I can better react to those things. That's what I gathered from those features. And at second level, then I get perfect recall, some sort of photographic memory stuff, and some sort of unyielding mind feature where I get bonuses to wisdom or intelligence saving throws too.
And does that class have subclasses?
Yes, it does. It has the archaeologist subclass, where it's some sort of dungeon delving focused thing. You can better see and find traps and know how to disable them. You can analyze or see or better find out who built this and why, and all of this kind of thing, dungeoneering stuff. Then there's the naturalist subclass, some sort of rangery nature boy kind of thing, and the philosopher subclass.
Just asking, at what level do you get the subclasses?
At third level.
And which would you like to choose?
I would like to choose the archaeologist subclass.
With that, I don't think we have anything else to talk about, except you have any special things you need to shout out now. If not, well then let's dive into our episode on political intrigue. Join in on the charity event The RPG-a-thon on March 27th, fundraising money for the Transgender Educational Network of Texas, featuring games like Hellshop's Core, Blades in the Dark, Fiasco, and an epic level D&D game. The event is live from 6 a.m. Eastern Time till 10 p.m. Eastern Time, non-stop on Tavern Nord's Twitch channel. There are several giveaways hosted throughout the day, including Dice by Phoenix Dice, Sourcebooks by Awfully Queer Heroes, baked cookies from Critical Hit Cookies, the Story Engine deck, as well as the Deck of Worlds, which help you create awesome prompts for your games by Story Engine, and art commissioned by wonderful artists such as Charlie Chon and Rosie Laugh. On top of that, you can buy merch of 3 designs created by Charlie Chon, of which all profits will go to TENT as well. If milestones and stretch goals in donations get hit, there will be even more goodies to give away, like a one-shot by Todd Moonbounce, more dice, and more art. Once again, the RPG-a-thon is hosted on the 27th of March from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. Eastern Time on Tavern Nord's Twitch channel, and all profits go to the Transgender Educational Network of Texas. For more information, see the links in this episode's show notes.
And with that, welcome back to the episode about political intrigue. So, as usual, the first question, Emil, what is political intrigue? Please tell me.
Well, political intrigue is a topic defined by two words, just like the home bases we had a few weeks ago. It's political and intrigue. What is important to say is political is an adjective, right, for intrigue. So, first of all, political is in relation to politics. This is literally the definition of political. But okay, what does politics mean? What does it mean to do something politically? Well, politics is, for me, activities taken that influence an area of a geographic location, and especially not just the location, but the people that live in that location. For example, the politics of a country. The politics the leaders of that country take are the actions that influence its citizens, that decide citizens' livelihoods, that decide their income and whatnot all, right?
Yeah.
And especially it's the debate between those in power, especially debating about stuff, about these things that influence citizens, people, everything that is basically influencing not just them, but also a lot of other people.
Yeah.
That is political. As for the intrigue side, what that is when you Google intrigue and get the definition of intrigue, it's secret plans or the making of plans in secret to do something that will harm, figuratively or literally, another person, which doesn't have anything to do with politics. That's why you put these two words together to get something like, for me, political intrigue is secret planning to do something to enhance oneself's political power while diminishing someone else's. That's kind of political intrigue.
Yeah, I think that puts it perfectly.
Kind of. Especially for TTRPGs, though, it often refers to a type of campaign or session that is filled with roleplay, debates, and interactions with NPCs and other player characters to achieve a goal, that of a political victory, whatever that victory may mean, and so to better one's own or one's faction's power and stand in politics, right? Playing a game where you are the people that do some stuff that then enhances your faction or your own political power.
Exactly.
Okay, so now we kind of know what political intrigue means. We talked about what these two words mean and what they mean in conjunction and what they mean for TTRPGs. And I hope people now understand that this is what we will talk about. Games that are designed to have a lot of roleplay and a lot of information and secret planning to, at the end, achieve a goal that is not a victory in combat, but a victory in politics, whatever that may mean for the game. And there are different levels to that intrigue or different levels to that politics, right? If you look around in the real world, there are different types of political magnitudes, let's call it that obviously will have a lot of influence on what type of game you play. So my first advice actually for creating a political intrigue game is deciding with your players at best on the magnitude of intrigue. But Niels, what magnitudes are there?
It depends a bit on the type of game you play. If you play some interstellar TTRPG, it could range from interplanetary or even interstellar system politics and intrigue towards just within a single company or within a single house sort of political intrigue, because there can be politics applied as well. So basically the whole spectrum between those two. In a private setting with just basically your family could be one political intrigue setting, which is a bit weird, but it could be from the scale. And then going up to basically no limit, depending on, or the limit actually would be how big your world is you're playing in, or the system is set in.
Yeah. I think there are different political issues and political things that obviously then play into the game you're playing. That's why this is the first decision. For example, I wrote down the local level, the baronies or certain small areas inside a country having a political dispute over land, for example. This is my land. No, this is my land by this contract or whatever, right? That could be a local level thing. We have a country level political intrigue. The country leadership, for example, in an election and how to win that election, which is a very cool end for the campaign. Make your party, for example, win this election. However you do that, do it. That could be fun. Or continental, diplomatic diplomatic relationships between countries that border each other. Especially the part for it, I think, countries that are directly affecting one another by doing whatever they are doing.
Yeah.
Right? Every country that borders another country is affected by the politics of that country still. Because the politics, the culture, the laws, the economics directly influence the country's neighbors the most. And then there's the global one, which is, as Neil said, the entire setting. You could also have interglobally, which then would be several planets or several different species of alien races or different galaxies having politics with another. But that's the same as having global politics, basically. People that don't really influence each other much, but still are at the same discussion table. That also has a lot of interesting politics. And kind of figuring out what level of intrigue you go for is the first step in figuring out what issues you really want in your political intrigue game to be.
Yeah, then just throwing this right back at you, what kind of issues are we talking about here?
Well, all types of issues that you can think of. That's the most correct answer I can give. But I would say my biggest advice when it comes to issues in your game, make them rather simple. And this is not saying you need to have them really banal, but you can't make them obscure or complicated because players won't understand. Players won't figure out what is actually being meant with that stuff. And they will get bored if they don't. They need to understand very clearly what is going on. So for example, the land dispute. Who owns this land? Could be a very interesting political intrigue game, or at least figuring out who. Not just finding out who, but also making sure that everyone is kind of happy with that and settling this dispute. Or there is supposed to be a new alliance forged between two countries that actually have a lot of war history behind them. How do you do that? That is also very interesting and very, very simple to understand what you're supposed to do and what is supposed to happen around them. It's graspable.
Yeah, and I think you should most of the time keep the issues down to 1 or maximum 2, because if you have more issues regarding this conflict politically, it just gets too convoluted. It just flows into each other and you don't really know anymore why this all started, how this is going to end and stuff like that. It just doesn't engage your players enough or to keep them interested in it.
100%, right? The thing about this is that, yes, you have one big issue, but obviously in that conflict or in that discussion around that issue, other smaller issues can come up.
Definitely.
Right? You have this land dispute and people want this land for different reasons. Someone just wants it to be theirs because it's always been theirs and they think they also deserve it. Others say we have a contract that says it's ours. Others say we want to protect this land because, I don't know, there is an ancient fossil found on that land and this needs to be protected and not owned by anyone or something. But that obviously opens up sub-issues. That fossil could be a sub-issue of that campaign. It doesn't have anything to do with the dispute of the land, but it has something to do with what happens with that fossil now.
Exactly. Just keep your main issue about the dispute to 1 or maximum 2, I would say. But you can create as many sub-issues as you want that spring out from this conflict being there, not causing the conflict.
Yeah, 100% right. That's kind of how politics work, right? You do one thing and then 1,000 different other questions open up and you need to figure them out as well.
Exactly.
And advice here is, hey, let your players show you and tell you, even with the feedback we had last episode, which of these sub-issues they want to focus on. They don't have to figure out everything. But there are some sub-issues they might want to put their eyes on and want to try to do stuff with. Let them do that then. Give them the option to do so. One other thing I want to say for issues is to make them, well, understandable, graspable, and interesting for your players is let them parallel real-world issues. I know a lot of people play TTRPGs to escape the real world, but still, we are humans that understand the real world, not some fantasy magic or some fantasy technologies or some cyberpunk issues really. But if they parallel real world issues we do understand, that then makes it very easy for us to figure out our stances on stuff and our understanding of how the stuff works. For example, immigration law.
Oh yeah.
One city is destroyed and people now need to immigrate to other cities or to other countries. And there's politics behind that. And that is something people can understand. You obviously can make it fantasy as you want. The mines of the dwarves have been destroyed and the dwarves now need to find a new place to live.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Still it's immigration issues at the core of it, but it's in a fantasy way or in your settings way. And that still parallels real world issues we are having right now.
Definitely. Or a classic would be social injustice. It's a big thing where someone might want to topple the current government because of rising social injustice.
Yeah.
You can make that fantasy and turn it into a political campaign or a political intrigue campaign. It just lends itself really well to those.
Yeah.
But we can understand these topics the campaign is then about because we have similar things happen to us as humans in the past. We can just more easily comprehend all of this.
Yeah, 100% I agree with that. Nils, we talked about what is intrigue, what levels of intrigue there are, and what issues are to be handled in that intrigue. But now let's talk about players.
Yeah.
Because they are the core of this all anyway. Let's talk about player buy-in for a second or for a minute. Talk to me about what player buy-in is needed and how much player buy-in is needed for these games. Obviously, aside from the buy-in of we want to play this game with you and not just, yeah, sure, I play with my friends, whatever. But what buy-in is needed to actually play a political intrigue game?
I think you need to be interested in role-playing, specifically political and tense talking and debate moments, because those will be a huge factor in those.
One thing about that is obviously players need to hold their character for a longer period of time. But because in combat, you obviously can still roleplay, but often the time the player makes the decisions in their head which ability to use. But in a political intrigue game, players might need to hold their character for a lot longer in a long, drawn-out debate.
Yeah, and then you have to be careful that there's still this disconnect between player and player character. It's difficult sometimes, so you all need to be on the same page that there will be some debate for a longer period of time role-playing and making decisions as the character and not as the player. Then following that, the players need to be interested in the world itself, because if they don't care about the world, why would they mingle in any sort of political stuff regarding it? If they just don't give a shit, then why would we help any sort of party on either side of the table?
Or why would we, like, okay, we're part of this party, but I don't identify at all, I don't know anything about that party. How am I supposed to represent them in a court or whatever?
Exactly.
I have a question for you, especially how to get players invested in your worlds. How do you get them invested in the factions you have at your debate table for this intrigue game?
I think a big thing would be to involve backstory elements from the characters into previous sessions you had before starting political intrigue. Or in general, I wouldn't say that you should start with a political intrigue session because players don't know the world too much or too good yet.
Well, the thing about that is, I agree, right? Players need to know the world. They need to understand it before getting into the intrigue game. But you can still start with an intrigue game. You just need to be smart about it.
Oh, yeah.
I would say.
Definitely. Just think about the scale then when you start as a political intrigue campaign. Don't set the scale too high at first, because, at least in my opinion, getting to know the world beforehand helps with understanding and better knowing what your characters would do on a bigger scale.
Yeah, as I said, right? The thing is, you need to get your players invested in the world. And if you create a new world for this intrigue game, yes, it won't be good to start with an intrigue style game because your players don't know the world, but you can still do it differently. Because first of all, you can world build with your players from the get-go. Play a game to world build your game. Make your players create the factions, not you. So they are invested already in those factions. Or very, very simply, which works great for political intrigue style games, in my opinion, use established settings already. And I'm not talking about the Forgotten Realms or Dragonlands or whatever setting you have for D&D or whatever other game you're playing. I'm talking Star Wars, World of Game of Thrones, the world of Lord of the Rings. Settings people are very invested in, that have been established over several years, have hundreds of pages of lore to them that you can draw from, and that your players all, even if they aren't the junkies for this type of style, right? I have two friends that are very hard Lord of the Ring junkies, and I don't really care about Lord of the Rings that much. They're good movies, good books, but aside from that, nothing else really for me. I don't discuss how elves did that 100 years before the movies or the books played or whatever. I don't care.
Yeah.
But I still have a basic basic understanding of Lord of the Rings and its factions and its people. So if someone invites me to a Lord of the Rings intrigue game, I still have enough basic understanding of the world and enough buy-in into the world that I could play the game.
Definitely.
You don't get that when you create a world for yourself, your players don't know a fuck ton about, and then just say, okay, cool, here, have this. Doesn't work that way.
Oh yeah, definitely. It is hard to invest your players sometimes. It can be a tough thing to do. But a different thing, when you played a couple of sessions before starting your political intrigue arc, basically, ground them locally and have the intrigue affect this area as well. This invests them as well, because now the characters are directly affected by the things the politics do, and they might want to change stuff.
Yeah, they have active buy-in into the politics and into this type of game. Obviously, when we're also talking about buy-in right now, as I said in the beginning, you need to have buy-in from your players to do political intrigue. Because political intrigue only works when your players buy into the idea of having the half of your session be one discussion with NPCs. Nothing else. That only works if your players say, okay, yes, I want that, or yes, cool, we want to do that. It doesn't work if you have a game that normally just is dungeon crawling and combat or monster hunting. Sure, that's fun, but then the switch can only happen if your players want that switch to happen, because they will just say, okay, yeah, my players just doesn't give a fuck and goes away again and tries to kill the next big monster. It doesn't work because you didn't have the right buy-in from your players, and that's okay. You don't need to cram every single campaign theme, every single session type into every game. It's okay to just have a fun game of monster hunting, and it's good to have the next chapter be political intrigue if there's the buy-in to that. It's okay, you don't have to do everything at once.
Yeah, and if you do everything at once, you can't really focus on a specific thing, and it all gets lost to some sort of extent. So pick out your campaign themes, like we talked about in one of our episodes. Then you can just focus better on what type of session you want to run within this theme. It just, some themes lend better to different types of session types you want to run.
Yeah. While we're on the topic of players, we talked about them having to need buy-in, but I want to talk about them needing to be active participants in the intrigue. Because why the fuck would you have your players attend a banquet or attend a political debate or attend whatever, to them just be standing around and listening to you roleplay NPCs debating with each other, or have your NPCs making decisions your players can't influence?
Exactly. This can get boring real.
Oh, it gets so boring so quick. And one thing about this is it doesn't even have to be that they are not the ones debating stuff, but they also need to be the one that make the decision. If they go to their prince or whatever, or to their faction leader, and they say to them, do this for me, or make sure that we get this political advantage, and your players go get that political advantage, but they can't form their own opinions, because guess what, people? Players will always form their own opinions about things. If you give them lore, if you give them information, if you give them secrets, they will make their own opinions on stuff. And if you don't let them act on those opinions, they will quickly realize that they are just there to play NPCs in your world. They are not the active participants anymore, even though they might be the ones that do the role-playing and trading and debating with other NPCs. But they don't make the decisions what they actually want for this to happen. I'm not saying that they need to be the leaders of their faction, but if they are part of a faction and you want them to have buy-in into your political intrigue game, don't make them the pawns of this chessboard. Make them the bishop, make them the queen, make them the king, yes, but you don't have to make them the king or queen. But you can't make them the pawns that you sacrifice at the beginning of a chess game.
Especially if you send your party, as they all believe in this one faction. The leader of the faction sends them to some sort of discussion with one of the other representatives of the other faction. The players need to have the ability to go in a bit of compromise between those two factions. They need to have the ability to change something. Just not, our leader said this and this and we won't budge. We won't move from this perspective. They need to have the ability to do that. Even
if they can make compromises with other factions, that's not even what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the problem that they only get orders and don't get to voice their own opinions on stuff. They have the buy-in into your world, and they are part of a faction, and the faction leader tells them something, and they believe that action that they are supposed to take is not a good one for their faction, because their leader is uncautious, their leader is repulsive, their leader is very full of pride that is now getting insulted and goes irrational and your players go, no, my lord, we need to do this rather than this, they need to have that option.
Oh, yeah.
That's
definitely.
why I'm saying don't make them the pawns. They can still not budge because their lord said something. But if they don't have the ability to influence their own faction, it won't matter how much they can influence the other factions.
Exactly. Because all of this projects some sort of agency towards the players to form themselves and the world around them.
Yeah.
And this is hugely important in TTRPGs because this is a storytelling game where you work together to build a world and a story together.
Yeah.
And if you take this together out, you don't really need to play.
You can just write a book. Totally
Exactly.
fine as well. No shame about that. So the thing is, political intrigue games can sometimes devolve into not rolling dice at all, because you use your words to impress opponents or to get them on your side, right? You might not need dice for that. Sure, there are dice rolls that you can do persuasion checks or deception checks or whatever, but sometimes there's very little dice rolling in this. And that's okay. But how do you still include, in quotation marks, action in your political intrigue games? Because sometimes players just want to roll some dice or have some combat. And I don't think that getting rid of that entirely makes the game better. I think a political intrigue game is enhanced by the right amount of combat. Sparsely, but there should be some.
Yeah, I think some specific session types lend themselves really well to political intrigue themes. For example, the heist or cloak and dagger session we talked about lend themselves really, really well to political intrigue, especially the cloak and dagger. Because sending your party to infiltrate and get new information or do whatever, we talked about this in another episode you can listen to, it just gives them the feeling of rolling dice, having action, and not always role-playing without just going into a straight-out war.
Yeah, right. You can have a lot of different action in different ways. And with action, I'm talking about dice rolling action. Sometimes people enjoy rolling a lot of dice in their games because it's still games and the chance should be involved and all of that stuff. So the dice should be involved in some way. But for example, when it comes to combat, one great way throughout history how people solved political issues and political debate was duels.
Oh, yeah.
So if you have a political intrigue game, having a duel is actually a valid option. Your player character or your NPC challenging the opponent to a duel that then devolves into a short combat, into a short let's roll some dice. That is totally fine. It's historically more or less accurate, and it's fun, honestly, to have a duel in your games.
Yeah, or the classic trial by combat. There can be such awesome story moments in that.
But there's a different aspect I want to touch on. I don't know if you ever had this come up in your games or in the games you've played so far, but there are a few games that have social combat rules that make debates matter with rules, with rolling dice. Social hit points until someone surrenders the social debate and one other person wins. What is your opinion on that?
I think can be useful if all of your players don't want to role play every single debate. But if you want to, or if they role play awesomely and give great points and stuff like that.
I mean, the rules include roleplay. That's the thing about them, right? These social combat rules include the roleplay. They just give it more mechanical coherentness.
Okay, yeah, I haven't really played any of that or heard about it, so...
It's totally fine because, especially before you play with those, yes, I can see them being a lot, like, against the how you play these games, because you're supposed to roleplay, why do we gamify this? But obviously, if the game is designed to do political intrigue, you need to gamify debates. People need to roll dice in that then. Because if not, you're literally just playing pretend without any math and any rules, which is okay, but that you're still playing a game and there are still some rules to it. So all different games that have these rules do it completely differently, obviously, so I can't really go into it. But generally, these games obviously allow a more structured way to the debates and allow your players and your NPCs to make points that make sense, while allowing your players because that's the thing, really. I think that's why I like these type of rules. Because we often say, let your players handle their characters and not tell them what to do, what happens, right?
Yeah.
Because your players are supposed to take action. If your players want to take that fact as an advantage, they would just say, well, my character still doesn't believe that person, even though they made the best point possible for that debate. These rules get your players in line that sometimes they will have to take losses in debates, because sometimes it can feel like your players have a power over you to just say, well, I don't give a fuck what that NPC says, no matter how good their point is. My character still doesn't believe it because I say so. And you can't say anything against it. The rules then say, well, no, fuck you. Your character just lost the debate. Your character now doesn't believe this. But the other person still won the point, still won the debate. Your character is now more or less obligated to have lost this debate, which has these effects. It gives an extra fairness to the social debates, which is important if you run a game that is focused on these social debates. And I think that's what people don't realize about these systems. They are there for the fairness of these social debates. If you are of the opinion that your games can work without them, yes, they can. They definitely can. I'm not saying that they can't. But these rules are there that give this fairness in social debates that sometimes people can't give without rules. And that's something you need to acknowledge as well. If you don't need them, it's okay. You don't have to use them. That's how everyone plays these games. Ignore the rules that you don't want to reuse. Saying that these rules are crap or that these rules are not needed is, in my opinion, wrong.
Yeah, I think needed, yes. Have to be used, no.
Yeah.
To summarize. I definitely have to try one of those social combat rule systems. They sound interesting to play, at least to try it sometimes. Then do you have any games that have these social combat rules right off on the top of your head?
I don't know, but I would say that there are a few games that lend itself very well for political intrigue games or social intrigue games. For example, Vampire the Masquerade, which you are actually playing. You still haven't gotten around to that, but I think there are rules in that rulebook. I haven't actually still read the rulebook. I still need to do that. The Song of Ice and Fire also has something for political intrigue as well. The Witcher game has games for social combat we never used because that's what something I spoke to you guys about in session 0 if you guys want to use it, and you said no. So we didn't use it. But that game also has social combat rules. Those 3 games on the top of my head are good for social or have these rules. D&D is totally fine as a game for political intrigue game, right? That's what I want to say. You can adapt every single game for a political intrigue game, but D&D is still designed for adventure type of games, so it doesn't fit perfectly for a political intrigue game. I'm not saying you can't use it. I'm just saying that there might be games that are better suited for this, even to your tastes. If you don't want to try a different game, hey, it's fine. I can't police you around. But I'm just saying, why not try a different game? If you don't want to, hey, that's okay. But I'm just giving you the option.
Yeah, just keep an open mind.
Yeah, and if you don't want to, that's okay.
Good advice in general. Keep an open mind to things. Works pretty well.
Yeah.
At least in my experience.
Yeah. So, Niels, we have 2 points left. I want to put the point we had last on our script up before this last point, actually, and ask you about, because we're right at the combat, right? We just talked about combat. So I want to talk about players as opponents in political intrigue. Because, right, PvP and TTRPGs is always like this hot topic where people are like, I don't like it. My players, we don't like it. It's not great to have my players fight against each other. But now they're not fighting. Now they're debating against each other. So I think PvP in political intrigue games, where it's not just combat strength or where it's not destroying each other's actions, but a little bit more of if the buy-in is there, could be very fun. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, definitely. There is a lot of awesome things that can spring up from this. Having one side of the party versus the other side of the party can get really, really interesting into awesome story moments. But I think you have to be careful with these things, especially because sometimes these social encounters where players are pitted against each other, basically, can lead to out-of-game problems sometimes. This is something that you have to be careful of. That if everyone's on the same page, that whatever we say in-game is just in-game and not out of game, awesome. But this is something you have to keep in mind. And possibly clear with your players, or definitely clear with your players before you do that. Set the expectations right. Manage them. Say, would it be okay for you if some of the party members would debate against each other or something like this? You have to need to talk about it. So yeah, but I think it's an awesome opportunity for both players and the DM and the world around them to create things, whatever those might be.
Yeah, when your players are from 2 different factions and opposing views and have to debate each other, it's a lot of fun for the players, especially if it isn't about destroying the fun of the other, which PvP often might devolve into. That's the fear people have, that it might destroy the fun for some people that are part of it. But if the game is about opposing each other's views, being against each other, but not destroying the fun of each other, it could be very fun, especially with social combat instead of actual combat, because it doesn't mean mean your player character gets killed. It means they get defeated in social combat for the day and can come back next day again and try to one up the other. Cool. But also with that in mind, I would say advice to every DM, keep the option in mind to let your players change factions, double cross each other or each faction or whatever, right? Keep that in mind that your players might change their faction, double cross their faction or whatever, because that is also a big story moment in these type of games. And letting your players, again, be active participants and an active party and not just pawns for a faction to use.
Yeah, but just imagine. Both players are representatives of different factions. The official representative of that faction in a debate. And after one of the players lost the debate, the next day, the official representative says, fuck this faction, I'm changing. The impact this move has on everyone else, NPCs, PCs, or the world, is just insane. Keep it in mind, awesome things can happen.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. So, Niels, for our last point, we talked about intrigues, what issues there are, especially the involvement of players in your games. Now we need to talk about how to create this game. A few step-by-steps, how to create a political intrigue game.
Well, first of all, you need to know which factions are playing against each other, who is trying to one-up one another, and all of you need to find the major players or factions or countries or whatever. You need to say this one against this one.
Yeah, you need to first, obviously, we talked about this, create the level of intrigue. That's something you discuss in session 0 with your players, and then you as a group or you as the DM yourself can create the major players. And that could be, okay, we have warmongering kingdom here, we have trade democracy there. Boom, those are my 2 players in this campaign, my 2 major players.
Exactly. And then coming from this, you need to obviously create the leaders for those parties.
About these leaders is they don't have to be single people, right? They could be kings or presidents or elected leaders or whatever, but there could also be entities like a council, like the whole population, maybe even, right? It's a complete democracy. Everyone has the same power to decide stuff. It could be that this is just the richest person in the country or whatever, but you need to give them some kind of leader. That could be the player or not, but if their players are not the leaders, I would put the players relatively close to the top of the hierarchy of this country and not be the political butlers or something. Well, okay, that might be fun as well if one of your players wants to play the political butler of the king, who doesn't actually have a lot of stuff to say, but might still be interesting in the game. That could also be fun, but make your players be active participants, be important participants.
Exactly, and make the leaders memorable or interesting NPCs, because in general, if you have major reoccurring NPCs, you don't want them to be John Doe. You want them, if you just say the name, the players know who you are talking to or about. And it's in general a good idea. Important things, keep them or make them memorable, interesting, engaging.
Yeah.
And then you need to think about the situation at hand, the problems between those factions, the laws, the culture, all of this. With what tools, basically, is this political conflict fought? Or what tools can they use? What influences what? And stuff like that. It's a bit vague to say, but in general, try to create the surrounding area, be it mentally, physically, depending on the situation. And then you need to see how everyone is standing in regards to each other. Basically, make a relationship map, or you could make a relationship map to better convey the information. Who is an ally of whom and stuff like that.
Which alliances are there? What? And I would say, especially to that relationship map, so through the starting relationships of everyone, think about the history. Make notes about historic things. Not just about the current political relationship, but also about history. Nations could have changed over years. Allies could have become enemies in a war. Or people have been allies for 100 years, but were before that were one country. Why have they split? And all of that sort of stuff. You need to think about this history as well, because history influences a lot of things that happen in the current moment.
Oh yeah. In general, you have to world build a lot for these specific settings, because you have to have a lot of information at hand ready to use, either for your players or for your NPCs to act on.
Yeah, I don't think you need a lot. Like, I don't want to say you need a lot of world building or home or lore, but you need to be ready to have information available at every given point in time.
Exactly.
You don't need to write 100 pages of lore for this game, but you need to be able to provide information whenever it is needed. Because information is more important than anything else for a political intrigue game. If you tell your players, I need to make that up, I will get back to you after the session, that information won't be able to be influential in that session. And that is a bummer. So either you need to be able to come up with stuff on the spot that makes sense, and that's why you need to do good world building. You need to have a good basis on these nations by having some laws, some cultures, some economic details, the leaders, and what they want, really, and their relationships. And then you can make good informed statements about the country you have never written down before.
Exactly. And then you need to make sure how to keep your players engaged to play the story with you. Because if it just deteriorates into debate after debate after debate, it can get quite tiring. But I think you should break it up with some breathing room between major political discussions. Maybe have some sort of downtime activity, festivals, or whatever. It is hard to put a finger on this, but you need to break up the way you are playing a bit more, because it can get quite tiring to just stay in character for 5 hours straight.
I believe that what you need to do is give some stuff that completely breaks from the political intrigue type of game. In a political intrigue game, when I imagine it, your players might be at a long court and be there for like a week or so. They will have time for downtime activities for other type of roleplay that is not political intrigue roleplay, but just personal downtime roleplay. But they will also have maybe time to investigate something, to read up some history and whatever your players enjoy, obviously. The political intrigue could also involve them having to at some point go out adventuring and finding something from a dark lich's crypt or whatever. That could also then be a break with a dungeon crawl for 2 or 3 sessions, or you have the game come to that. And how to keep them engaged is obviously by introducing new information that is interesting every single time they need it.
Yeah.
Have a double cross, not even they double crossing someone, but someone else double cross someone, or a murder happening, like a murder mystery, or whatever happening. Something to shake up the game, the political intrigue type of the game. And when you shake it up, that is going to be interesting for the players, because players will follow the part where they think the most fun will lie. That is something universally true for TTRPGs, that you can never escape. Your players will always follow the path they think is the most fun for them. No matter how much sense it would make to react the other way, they will take the path that is the most fun for them. And that is a subconscious decision they make. You can't influence that. And that's why when you introduce new fun things, your players will have new fun things. And will then engage with that.
Oh, yeah. And I think you don't have to... Everything you do within a political intrigue setting or campaign theme has to correlate to that political dispute. But if it does, but turns out later to be involved in that, is an awesome moment for your players to find out. If you have some sort of, if you have some sort of killing happening, there's a killer in the loose. This breaks up the whole political dispute thing you had going on beforehand. If it then later, with new information, turns out that this killer had something to do with the opposing faction, and you piece that all together, it's just an awesome story moment for your players. But you don't have to correlate those two things.
I think with that, we kind of gave a good overview of political intrigue in TTRPGs. We talked about the levels, or the magnitude, as I like to call it, of intrigue, of political intrigue. We talked about what issues you should have in your intrigue, or how to handle issues. We talked a lot about player stances, buy-in and active participants. We talked about how you can still include combat and or action and dice rolling in your games. And we talked about how to create and start a political intrigue game. So I think with that, all I can say that is left is really, if you have your political intrigue games and you come here to this episode to actually think about how to keep them going, you don't have to keep them going forever. I think political intrigue games kind of lend itself better for shorter type of games.
Yeah.
For more condensed condensed grand sessions of intrigue than having a long, drawn-out intrigue game over several years.
Yeah, you need to have some sort of relatively quick sort of closure for it to have a good impact.
You could have arcs to it, obviously, right? And those arcs could be rather short and have big closure. I think closure is the best thing to say to that, because intrigue might not work well with closure to stuff. For example, if you have a quest line, kill this dragon. After the dragon is killed, you have closure, and that opens up the next path or whatever. But in an intrigue game, the closure just comes if the things you basically, and now in quotation marks, fought for politically actually come to you. But that takes a lot of time until those things come to you.
Yeah.
Because of politics. So having some sort of closure that is clearly felt, I think helps a lot.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think we could go on and on and on about this because it's just such a deep topic, like real life politics as well. But I think we covered most of it.
Yeah.
As usual, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at DoubleDMPod, or you could visit our website at www.doubledm.com, or you could donate to us on Ko-Fi. And please leave a review on your podcast listening platform of your choice. It really helps the show out.
Bye-bye, people.
Hear you on the next one. Bye-bye.